challenge and pleasure await in all corners of our beautiful country for those prepared to take on these testing routes people change when they get on a bike. Slinging a leg over the crossbar flicks the athlete switch. For many of us on two wheels, we try to make life harder for ourselves. Flat, easy roads are all well and good, but as cyclists love to seek out the tough stuff. And we all love the idea of challenging ourselves in the mountains. While the UK's quota of Alpine-style climbing is limited, Old Blighty can do rolling terrain all day long, sharp pulls, tight little descents, shoddy surfaces, and plenty of wind. Britain has tough roads in spades. With that in mind, we set out to explore a few choice cuts. 1 Bridport to Abbotsbury, Dorset, 8/10 length, 8.75 miles, elevation, 258 meters. We say, son, your ego's riding checks your body can't cash, hunched over the bars, starring bug-eyed at the near-vertical tarmac shard in front of me. James Tolkien's immortal quote from the film Top Gun springs to mind. There's a loud crack from somewhere in the drivetrain. Behind me a small phalanx of cars burn clutches furiously. I wobble, and finally stop. Bugger. What in God's name had possessed me to go in search of Britain's toughest roads and then ride them? I didn't even have the excuse of being taken unawares by the gradient. It's a massive, fairly steep climb out of Abbotsbury. CC Weymouth Chair Andrew Preston's words ring repeatedly in my ears as I trudge up a 20% ramp, musing how I'd brought this all on myself. The B3157 Abbotsbury to Bridport Road on the Jurassic Coast combines the perfect, toughest roads ingredients. With its incessant ramps and stunning sea views, it quickly made it onto the shortlist. Tarmac is smooth, and although being a B road it can be a little on the busy side, it's far from intimidating. Greater than 8 reasons why cycling in Dorset is absolutely great. My westward bearing means the pleasure of a prevailing wind in my face. Not that it really matters when you're walking at 2 miles per hour. The steepest 50 yards out of the way, I have a go at remounting, easier said than done on a near 20% hill. My ultimate destination of Bridport is still some 8 miles away. Finally, over the summit, the sea lit up by the afternoon sun, I ease off and let the speed build. Between melting snowdrifts I am soft pedaling at 20 miles per hour and wondering what the fuss was about. It's a rolling descent down into Bridport, with some pretty sharp little climbs up. So you're generally losing height, but you've got to keep going up, little 20%ers. Preston had warned me beforehand. Surely once Abbotsbury Hill was out of the way, how hard could it be? After all, it's pretty much all downhill from here and the surface is pleasantly smooth. As the gentle descent dips into the hamlet of Swire, the follow-up to Abbotsbury Hill's Haymaker is revealed. A sharp ramp of around half a mile, strap a segment, the climb out of Swire, which averages 5% and peaks mid-teens. Abbotsbury Hill is but a memory, but its legacy remains. It has basically destroyed my legs. The views west along the coast, with the soaring Golden Cap Cliff summit in the distance, ease the deadness as I hunker down for 2 further miles of rolling descent into the village of Burton Bradstock in the foot of the last of the day's climbing. Another half-mile haul with a jagged profile. It only averages 3%, but out comes the bottom gear again. My initial idea was to ride the road from west to east, but Preston had convinced me otherwise. Starting in Abbotsbury was harder. Certainly on the initial downhill slopes, I've begun to wonder if I was right after all, but as each consecutive ramp bites harder than the last, I begin to see his point. By the time I roll into the car park at West Bay on the outskirts of Bridport, I've done 2,000 feet of climbing in 20 miles and my legs are cooked. Says Preston, "It's an awesome road, really superb. If you're traveling down to Dorset you should definitely go along it, because it's great." Strava segment, Abbotsbury Hill climb, KOM, Phil C. 5.07 com, Amy Johansford 7.122 Freshwater Knighton Military Road, Isle of Wight 9/10 length, 12.6 miles, elevation, 322 meters. We say, you're spoiled for choice if you fancy putting yourself through the ringer on a bike on the Isle of Wight, but it is the A3055 military road that follows the island's southwest coast that CW homed in on for toughest roads. Profile tells a story of a long, undulating road bookmarked by significant climbs at each end, which change character depending on which way you ride it. If you start at the Knighton end, the prevailing southwesterlies could really spoil your morning. But we've gone with the freshwater start, which features 50% more climbing and a general uphill trend over its length. You say, after the initial climbs, it's a fast undulating 10 kilometers stretch of open country before the steady climb up to Black Gang Chine begins, rapidly steepening to 16%. You're rewarded by an exhilarating blast down the far side to Knighton, with a decent climb at either end and a seriously quick descent to follow. What's not to like? Richard Bioli, West White Wheelers Strava segment, Military Road East, KOM, James Beale 2.45 km, Holly D 3.273 Beaulieu to Lyndhurst, Hampshire 7/10 length, 6.9 miles, elevation, 113 meters. We say, this innocuous corner of southern England is probably better known for wandering ponies in the National Motor Museum than for Nail's hard cycling roads. But the rolling nature of the area, complete with a coastal location ripe for sea winds and some grippy surfaces, make the New Forest ideal for toughest roads purposes. This 7-mile stretch of the B3056 runs northwest from the village of Beaulieu to the capital of the New Forest, Lyndhurst. The road itself climbs no significant hills, but it has everything else. It's windy, and most of all it's incessantly lumpy along its entire length, finishing with a flourish as it climbs into Lyndhurst. Prevailing southwesterlies add to the lumpiness and make for a challenging cross-headwind that is especially pronounced during the second half. You say, if it's a bad day and the wind's in the wrong direction, you can be doing all the power you've got and doing about 8 miles per hour. It's amazing how strong you get in the forest, because of roads like this one. Stuart Ward, New Forest CC Strava segment, Denny to Bolton's KOM, Chris A 4.23 km, Helen McAllister 4.174 Touredon to Diabeg Highlands 9/10 length, 9.2 miles, elevation, 350 meters. We say, popular legend has it that Game of Thrones creator George R.R. Martin once visited Westeros region and was taken enough to reimagine the setting as Westeros in his fantasy novels. Meanwhile, back on planet Earth, the 9 miles of narrow, sinuous tarmac winding from Torridon to Diabeg lies quietly in wait on Scotland's west coast, ready to slap in the jaw of every visiting cyclist. Partly thanks to its beautiful setting on the coastal shores of Loch Torridon, yes, but also its unstinting repertoire of ups and downs. Double black arrows abound. In between admiring the scenery, you'll be breathing through orifices you never knew you had. It's hard to describe this tiny, unclassified thoroughfare as anything but the road to Lower Diabeg, seeing as it stops abruptly when you get there, and on a regular road bike you'll have to retrace your tracks to get out. You say, just after Torridon the road takes a right turn and starts to head up past Inveralligan. The next 8 miles is either up or down, with quite a few gradients over 20%. The only way out is the way you came. Jeff Patterson, Turf Cyclists Strava segment, Big L, Alligan Climb, KOM, Jeff Patterson 19.55 km, Jane Taylor 25.325 Betty Hill to Melvich Highlands 10/10 length, 12.5 miles. Elevation, 364 meters. We say, if this stretch of road was pancake flat with a billiard table surface, many of those who ride it would still find it one of the toughest roads they've ever ridden. That's because it forms part of the final big push to John O'Groats along Scotland's north coast on the fabled end-to-end ride, and everyone has 800 miles plus in their legs before they have even started. Happily for the cyclist in search of some good old-fashioned suffering, the AA36 Betty Hill Melvich Road is anything but pancake flat. There are 3 distinct humps over its 15-mile length, the first rising from near sea level to nearly 500 meters over the course of 3 uppy-downy miles. After descending slowly, then more suddenly back to sea level at around the halfway mark, the second, smaller hump kicks up. Ride this lumpy plateau for 2 miles, hopefully with the prevailing wind behind you, then drop to sea level again to kick back up to 300 meters and follow the undulating but slowly descending road over the last few miles to Melvich. But don't empty the tank. Melvich is a hamlet. It most definitely doesn't feature a Tesco Express. You say, windy, stupidly undulating, grippy, scenery is second to none. Use the post office in Betty Hill to stock up on supplies. Steve Shrubsell, The Jog Survivor Strava segment, Did you do 100 miles before? KOM, Jason Duggan 28.59 km, Rose Hewig 34.416 West Yorkshire Cycle Route to Batingsdam 8/10 length, 4.2 miles, elevation, 190 meters northern exposure, tackle the windswept gradients of West Yorkshire. Photo by Andy Jones. We say, if you're going to ride the UK's toughest roads, why not enjoy them to full effect and wait for the worst possible weather before setting out? I tried to console myself with this idea as I cranked my way upwards into the ever more barren, ever more wet reaches of the moors in West Yorkshire. This particular treat is a 5-mile moorland escapade, meandering up into the hills from Sowerby and following a mazy southerly traverse before ending more or less at Batingsdam near Ripondon. It forms part of the West Yorkshire Cycle Route, a 150 meters (260 kilometers) loop that roughly traverses the West Yorkshire boundary. Touching as it is on the Yorkshire Dales to the north and the Peak District to the south, opportunities abound for on-bike suffering around here, but, as local rider Tim Bonneville-Ginn assures me, this road is one of the toughest, as well as being the most exposed and rugged. There are loads of ups and down, gravel, dirt, steep climbs and tight descents, he says. I ride it about 5 times a month as Calderdale and the surrounding area has so much to offer with road cycling. It's made tougher by the fact that you will always have a crosswind when you're out on the moors. This opening stretch of toughest road is made all the harder by the fact I've just completed a steep mile-long climb just to get here, and as the road narrows and leaves Sowerby via Wellhead Lane, it simply carries on climbing. Bonneville-Ginn's advice not to overdo it because the ride up to the route is tricky no matter where you start, are indeed wise words. The dry stone walls flanking me offer little shelter from the elements as the houses thin out and give way to the imposing moorland. Greater than 5 climbs you've probably never heard of but need to go and ride. My reward for facing down the wind and rain, dodgy road surfaces and copious amounts of horse dung comes soon and predictably enough in the form of some pretty amazing views. Even through the mist, a vista well worth stopping to admire appears to the east. As Bonneville-Ginn mentions, the challenges of this route aren't confined to exposed climbing. One steep little downhill corkscrew tests both brakes and technical skill, but I'm quickly back to gaining descent again as I head further up onto the moors. With the rain abating, I stop again, this time on a sharp corner at the head of a picturesque valley. Civilization feels a long way off, yet someone has installed a bench here, complete with a dedication plaque. While the worst of the weather is over, it's no conditions for a prolonged rest, so I get back in the saddle again. With the bulk of the hard yards out of the way, all that remains is a flat but still exposed stretch before the road falls gently off the side off the moor to its conclusion at Blueball Lane. Strava segment, to the brink, KOM, Rickclough 1.06 com, Nicola Matthews 1.37.